The crystal wine glass shattered against the marble floor with a sound that made every person in the five-star restaurant freeze. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the quiet sobbing of Jessica, the third waitress to quit in 2 weeks. She stood there, her white apron stained with expensive wine, tears streaming down her face as she stared at the man who had just destroyed her confidence with nothing more than words. "Get out of my sight," the man said coldly, not even looking up from his phone. His voice carried the kind of authority that came from owning half the city's skyline. "And tell your manager that if he wants to keep serving me, he better find staff who aren't completely useless." Jessica didn't need to be told twice. She ripped off her apron, threw it on the floor, and walked straight out of Lumiere, the most exclusive restaurant in downtown Chicago. The other diners pretended not to stare, but everyone knew what had just happened. Table 7 had claimed another victim. Harrison Mitchell III sat alone at his usual corner table, a fortress of expensive suits and cold indifference. At 32 he was worth more money than most people could count, with a business empire that stretched across 3 continents. He was also the most feared customer in the entire city's dining scene. Restaurants dreaded his reservations but couldn't afford to refuse them. His money was good even if his manners were terrible. The restaurant manager, Pierre Dubois, hurried over with practiced calm, though his hands were shaking slightly. He had been dealing with Harrison's impossible demands for 3 years now, and it never got easier. "Mr. Mitchell, I sincerely apologize for the inconvenience. We will have a replacement server for you immediately." Harrison finally looked up, his steel-gray eyes cutting through Pierre like a blade. "This is the 3rd one this month, Pierre. Are you running a restaurant or a daycare center? I asked for my steak medium rare, not medium well. I wanted the sauce on the side, not drowning the meat. And the wine she brought me was clearly not the vintage I ordered. These mistakes are unacceptable." "Of course, sir. We will correct everything right away," Pierre said, though they both knew the steak had been cooked exactly as ordered, the sauce had been on the side, and the wine was indeed the correct vintage. But arguing with Harrison Mitchell was like arguing with a hurricane. You just tried to survive it. As Pierre scurried away to find yet another brave soul willing to serve table 7, Harrison returned to his phone, completely unbothered by the chaos he had just created. This was his routine. Every Tuesday and Friday evening he came to Lumiere, sat at table 7, and methodically broke down whatever waitstaff member was unlucky enough to be assigned to him. It wasn't personal. It was just who he was. The kitchen staff whispered among themselves as they watched Pierre pace back and forth, desperately trying to figure out who he could possibly send out there next. "That man is pure evil," muttered Carlos, the sous chef. 3 girls this month. 3. How does he sleep at night?" "Probably on sheets made of money," replied Janet, one of the senior waitresses who had been smart enough to request never to serve table 7 again after her first traumatic encounter 6 months ago. "I heard he made Amanda cry so hard she had to go to therapy." "Therapy? Over a dinner service?" Pierre wiped sweat from his forehead. Lumiere had a reputation to maintain. They were booked solid for the next 3 months, with customers flying in from other states just to experience their legendary service. But Harrison Mitchell was slowly destroying his staff one person at a time. He paid well for his meals, always left exactly 15% tip regardless of service quality, and never caused a scene loud enough to disturb other diners. But his quiet cruelty was somehow worse than if he had just screamed and thrown things. The truth was, Pierre was running out of options. Word had spread through the restaurant industry about Harrison Mitchell and Table 7. New hires specifically asked not to be assigned to him. Experienced servers requested transfers to other restaurants rather than deal with him. Pierre had even tried serving Harrison himself once, but the billionaire had simply stared at him with those cold eyes and said, "I don't pay premium prices to be served by management. Get me a proper waitress." Harrison checked his watch, a platinum piece that cost more than most people's cars. He had exactly 1 hour before his next conference call with investors in Tokyo. The delay was annoying but not unexpected. He had learned to build extra time into his schedule around dinner at Lumiere, knowing that his standards often resulted in staffing disruptions. He looked around the restaurant with mild interest. The other diners were clearly wealthy, but they lacked his presence, his power. They whispered and laughed and enjoyed their meals like ordinary people. Harrison couldn't remember the last time he had simply enjoyed anything. Everything was business. Everything was about maintaining control, keeping his empire running, staying ahead of competitors who would destroy him given the chance. The loneliness that sometimes crept into his thoughts during quiet moments like this was quickly pushed away. He had no time for such weakness. Emotions were liabilities in his world. Caring about people meant giving them power over you, and Harrison Mitchell bowed to no one. Pierre appeared again at his table, looking like a man about to face a firing squad. Mr. Mitchell, I'm afraid we're having some staffing challenges tonight. Perhaps we could reschedule your reservation for another evening? Harrison's expression didn't change, but the temperature around table 7 seemed to drop 10 degrees. Pierre, I have been coming to this restaurant for 3 years. I have never missed a reservation, never failed to pay my bill, and never asked for anything more than competent service. Are you telling me that Lumiere is no longer capable of providing that? No sir, of course not. It's just that. Pierre's voice trailed off as he realized there was no good way to finish that sentence. Then find me a server. Now. Harrison's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of someone who was used to having his orders followed without question. As Pierre hurried away once again, Harrison returned to his phone, scrolling through emails about stock prices and merger proposals. He was completely unaware that across the restaurant, in the employee break room, a young woman was tying on an apron for the first time, about to change both of their lives forever. The other staff members watched with a mixture of pity and admiration as the new girl prepared to face table 7. She was young, maybe 23 or 24, with natural hair pulled back in a neat bun and kind eyes that hadn't yet been hardened by the restaurant industry. She moved with quiet confidence, checking her appearance in the small mirror by the time clock. "Honey, you sure about this?" asked Janet, placing a motherly hand on the young woman's shoulder. "That man out there, he's not like other difficult customers. He will break you down just for sport." The new waitress smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both gentle and determined. "I've dealt with difficult people before. How bad can one customer really be?" Janet and the other servers exchanged glances. They all remembered being that naive once, before Harrison Mitchell had taught them exactly how bad one customer could really be. Destiny Washington had been looking for a job for 3 weeks when she saw the help wanted sign in the window of Lumiere. She was 24 years old, had recently moved to Chicago from Atlanta, and was determined to make a fresh start in the big city. Her savings were running low, and the fancy restaurant looked like the kind of place where tips might actually pay the bills. She had grown up in a house where please and thank you were requirements, not suggestions, where hard work was respected above all else, and where standing up for yourself was considered a virtue, not a character flaw. Her grandmother had raised her after her parents died in a car accident when she was 12, and Grandma Rose had not raised any pushovers. "Baby girl," Grandma Rose used to say, "the world is full of people who will try to make you smaller so they can feel bigger. Don't you ever let them. You stand tall, you speak up, and you remember that your worth doesn't come from what other people think of you." Those words had carried Destiny through high school, through 2 years of community college, and through the heartbreak of losing Grandma Rose to cancer 6 months ago. Now they were carrying her into this gleaming restaurant where everything sparkled and the menu prices made her eyes water. Pierre had hired her on the spot. She was pretty, well-spoken, and desperate enough to start immediately. He hadn't mentioned table 7 during the interview, figuring he would ease her into the more challenging aspects of the job. But now, with Jessica's dramatic exit and Harrison Mitchell sitting at his table checking his watch with growing impatience, Pierre was out of options. "Destiny," he said, pulling her aside in the break room, "I'm going to start you off with one of our regular customers. He can be a bit particular about his service." Destiny nodded, adjusting her black uniform and checking that her name tag was straight. "Particular how?" Pierre struggled to find the right words. How do you explain Harrison Mitchell to someone who had never experienced his particular brand of cruelty? He has very high standards. The most important thing is to stay professional no matter what happens. Don't take anything personally. Just focus on getting his order right and getting through the service. "Okay," Destiny said simply. She had worked at a diner back in Atlanta where drunk truckers and cranky construction workers were regular customers. How much worse could one rich man be? Pierre led her through the main dining room, past tables full of well-dressed diners enjoying their expensive meals. The atmosphere was elegant and refined, with soft classical music playing in the background and candles flickering on every table. Destiny felt a little thrill of pride. This was definitely a step up from the Waffle House. They stopped at table 7, where Harrison Mitchell sat alone, radiating an aura of cold authority that seemed to push back against anyone who came too close. He was handsome in a sharp, dangerous way, with dark hair perfectly styled and clothes that probably cost more than Destiny's rent. But his eyes were what caught her attention. They were the color of storm clouds and just as unwelcoming. "Mr. Mitchell," Pierre said with forced cheerfulness, "this is Destiny Washington. She'll be taking care of you this evening." Harrison looked up from his phone, his gaze sweeping over Destiny with the same interest he might show a piece of furniture. She felt his eyes taking inventory of everything about her, from her carefully pressed uniform to her confident posture. For just a moment, something flickered across his expression, but it was gone so quickly she might have imagined it. "Fine," he said, his voice flat and dismissive. "I'll have my usual." Pierre's face went pale. "Your usual, yes of course. Destiny, Mr. Mitchell's usual is?" He trailed off, realizing that this was information new staff wouldn't have. Harrison's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Are you telling me you hired someone who doesn't know my order? I've been coming here for 3 years, Pierre. 3 years of the same meal every Tuesday and Friday. And you assign me someone who doesn't even know what I eat." Destiny felt the tension crackling around the table like electricity before a storm. She could see Pierre starting to panic, could sense other servers and diners beginning to stare. This was the moment, she realized, where most people would start to crumble under the pressure of Harrison Mitchell's disapproval. Instead she smiled. "You're absolutely right, Mr. Mitchell," she said, her voice calm and pleasant. "I'm new, so I don't know your usual order yet. But I'm a fast learner, and I promise I'll remember it perfectly after tonight. Would you mind telling me what you'd like?" Harrison stared at her, clearly taken aback by her response. Most servers by this point would be stammering apologies or looking around desperately for rescue. But Destiny just stood there, pen poised over her order pad, waiting patiently for him to speak. "I want the filet mignon, medium rare, with the peppercorn sauce on the side," he said slowly, as if testing to see if she would crack under the precision of his requirements. "The asparagus should be steamed, not grilled, and I want them firm, not mushy. The potatoes should be baked, not mashed, with butter and sour cream served separately. For wine, I want the 2018 Cabernet Sauvignon, and I want to see the bottle before you open it to confirm it's the correct vintage." Destiny wrote everything down carefully, repeating each detail back to him to make sure she had it right. Filet mignon, medium rare, peppercorn sauce on the side. Steamed asparagus, firm. Baked potato with butter and sour cream served separately. 2018 Cabernet Sauvignon, and you'd like to see the bottle first. Is there anything else? Harrison studied her face, looking for signs of the anxiety or irritation that usually appeared by this point in the ordering process. But Destiny's expression remained pleasantly professional, as if taking complicated orders from demanding customers was the most natural thing in the world. "That's all," he said finally. "Perfect. I'll get that started for you right away, Mr. Mitchell." Destiny smiled again, that same warm, genuine expression that somehow managed to make the cold atmosphere around table 7 feel a little less oppressive. As she walked away toward the kitchen, Harrison found himself watching her go. There was something different about this one. She moved with purpose but without hurry, carried herself with quiet confidence, and hadn't shown even a flicker of the fear or resentment he was used to seeing in servers' faces. Pierre lingered nervously at the table. "Is everything all right, Mr. Mitchell?" Harrison waved him away without looking up from his phone. But for the first time in months, he wasn't thinking about stock prices or business deals. He was thinking about a young woman with kind eyes who had just treated his impossible demands like they were perfectly reasonable requests. In the kitchen, Destiny relayed the order to Carlos, who looked at her with something approaching awe. "Girl, you just survived your first encounter with the terror of Table 7. How do you feel?" "Fine," Destiny said, genuinely confused by the question. "He seemed like a pretty standard demanding customer to me. Why is everyone acting like he's some kind of monster?" Carlos laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Honey, you just wait. That was just the appetizer. The main course is coming." But Destiny was already focused on the next task, checking with the sommelier about the wine, making sure the kitchen understood exactly how the asparagus needed to be prepared. She had a job to do and she intended to do it well. Harrison Mitchell might be difficult, but she had dealt with difficult people before. The key was simple: treat everyone with respect, do your job professionally, and don't let anyone make you feel small. She had no idea that across the dining room, Harrison Mitchell was experiencing something he hadn't felt in years: curiosity about another human being. 20 minutes later, Destiny approached table 7 carrying a silver tray with Harrison's wine. The dining room hummed with quiet conversation, but she could feel eyes watching her from every direction. Word had spread among the staff that the new girl was serving the terror of Table 7, and everyone was waiting to see how long she would last. Harrison looked up as she approached, his expression unreadable. Destiny set the wine glass down carefully and presented the bottle, turning the label toward him so he could inspect it. 2018 Cabernet Sauvignon as requested, she said pleasantly. Harrison examined the bottle with the intensity of a detective studying evidence. He checked the vintage, the vineyard, even the condition of the cork. Finally, he nodded curtly. Open it. Destiny uncorked the wine with practiced efficiency, a skill she had learned during her brief stint at a wine bar in Atlanta. She poured a small amount into his glass for tasting, then stepped back and waited. Harrison swirled the wine, inhaled its aroma, and took a careful sip. For a moment, Destiny thought he might actually approve. Then his expression darkened. "This wine is too warm," he said, his voice cutting through the restaurant's gentle atmosphere like a blade. "I specifically requested the 2018 Cabernet, which should be served at exactly 65 degrees. This is clearly closer to 70. Take it back." Destiny felt every eye in the restaurant turn toward their table. She could see Pierre starting to hurry over, probably to offer profuse apologies and comp the entire meal. She could see other servers exchanging knowing looks, waiting for her to crack under the pressure. Instead, she nodded politely. "Of course, Mr. Mitchell. I'll have them chill it properly and bring you a fresh glass." But as she reached for the bottle, Harrison's hand shot out to stop her. "Don't touch it," he snapped. "You've already ruined this bottle by serving it at the wrong temperature. I want a new bottle, properly chilled from the wine cellar, not something you've tried to fix after the fact." The silence around them was deafening. This was the moment where most servers would start to stammer, to apologize, to show the fear that Harrison fed on. Destiny felt her grandmother's voice in her head. "Don't you ever let them make you smaller." She looked Harrison Mitchell directly in the eyes and smiled. "Mr. Mitchell, I understand you want your wine at the perfect temperature, and I respect that. But I have to ask, did you actually check the temperature of this wine, or are you assuming it's too warm?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Harrison stared at her, clearly shocked that she had questioned him. Around them, the restaurant held its collective breath. "Are you suggesting I don't know the proper serving temperature for wine?" Harrison's voice was dangerously quiet. "Not at all," Destiny replied, her tone remaining perfectly professional. "I'm sure you know wine better than I do. I'm just saying that if you'd like, we could actually check the temperature to be certain before I bring you a new bottle. That way, if there is a problem with our wine storage, we can fix it for future visits." Harrison felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Someone was challenging him without being disrespectful, questioning his judgment without attacking his authority. It was so unexpected that for a moment he didn't know how to respond. "Fine," he said finally. "Check it." Destiny nodded and walked calmly to the bar, returning with a wine thermometer. She inserted it into the bottle and waited a moment before reading the result. 64 degrees, she announced. Just 1 degree cooler than the recommended serving temperature. "Would you like me to let it warm up for a few minutes, or would you prefer to drink it as is?" The entire restaurant seemed to exhale at once. Harrison stared at the thermometer reading, then at Destiny's calm, professional expression. She hadn't humiliated him or made him look foolish. Instead, she had simply provided facts and offered solutions. "The wine is fine," he said quietly. "Excellent," Destiny replied, pouring his glass properly full. "Your dinner should be ready in about 10 minutes. Is there anything else I can get for you while you wait?" Harrison shook his head, still processing what had just happened. As Destiny walked away, he found himself watching her again. She had just done something no server had ever done before. She had stood up to him without being confrontational, challenged him without being disrespectful, and somehow made him look reasonable instead of impossible. In the kitchen, the staff clustered around Destiny like she was some kind of superhero. "Girl, what did you do to that man?" Janet whispered. "He actually backed down." "I didn't do anything special," Destiny said, checking on Harrison's steak with Carlos. "I just treated him like a regular customer who wanted good service." "Regular customers don't make 3 servers quit in 2 weeks, Carlos pointed out. Destiny shrugged. Maybe they were approaching him wrong. "Look, difficult customers usually act out because they feel like they're not being heard or respected. If you listen to what they actually want and treat them with dignity, most of them calm down." The kitchen staff exchanged glances. This new girl was either incredibly naive or incredibly wise, and none of them could figure out which. Back at table 7, Harrison found himself in unfamiliar territory. He was used to servers who either cowered before his demands or grew resentful under his criticism. But Destiny had done neither. She had simply addressed his concerns professionally and moved on. It was so unusual that he couldn't stop thinking about it. When she returned with his meal, Harrison inspected every detail with his usual intensity. The steak was perfectly medium rare, the asparagus was steamed to exactly the right firmness, The potato was fluffy and hot with the condiments arranged neatly on the side. It was, he had to admit, exactly what he had ordered. "How does everything look?" Destiny asked, standing beside the table with that same pleasant, professional demeanor. Harrison cut into the steak, tasted it, tried the asparagus and potato. Everything was perfect, which should have pleased him but somehow made him feel vaguely disappointed. He had been looking forward to finding something wrong, to having another verbal sparring match with this unusual young woman. "It's acceptable," he said finally. Destiny smiled as if he had given her the highest praise. "I'm so glad. Please let me know if you need anything else." As she walked away, Harrison realized something that disturbed him more than he cared to admit. For the first time in years he was actually enjoying his dinner at Lumiere. Not because the food was better than usual but because the service had been interesting. He spent the rest of his meal trying to figure out what made Destiny Washington different from every other server he had encountered. She was young but not inexperienced, confident but not arrogant, respectful but not servile. And when he had challenged her, she had responded with facts instead of fear. Harrison Mitchell was a man who prided himself on understanding people, on being able to predict and control their behavior. But this young woman had just proven that he understood nothing at all about the person serving his dinner. And for the first time in a very long time he found himself looking forward to finding out more. Over the next 2 weeks, Harrison Mitchell found himself thinking about Tuesday and Friday evenings in a way he never had before. Instead of dreading the inevitable incompetence of restaurant staff, he discovered he was curious about what would happen next at table 7. Destiny had been assigned as his permanent server after Pierre realized she was the first person in 3 years who could handle Harrison without having a nervous breakdown. She had settled into a routine with him that was unlike anything the restaurant had ever seen. She treated his impossible demands as reasonable requests, responded to his criticism with professionalism, and somehow managed to make him seem like a normal customer instead of a tyrant. But Harrison wasn't ready to make things easy for her. If anything, her unusual responses only encouraged him to push harder, to find the breaking point that every other server had reached. He began making his requests more specific, his criticisms more pointed, his expectations more unreasonable. On the 3rd Tuesday of serving him, Destiny approached his table with her usual smile, notepad ready. "Good evening, Mr. Mitchell. How are you tonight?" "I'm fine," Harrison replied curtly, not looking up from his phone. "I want my usual, but tonight I want the steak cooked to exactly medium rare, which means an internal temperature of precisely 135 degrees. Not 134, not 136. 135. Most servers would have started to look nervous at this point, wondering how they could possibly ensure such precision. Destiny simply nodded. "Of course. Would you like me to have the chef check the temperature before it's served to make sure it meets your requirements?" Harrison finally looked up, studying her face for signs of sarcasm or frustration. But her expression remained genuinely helpful, as if ensuring precise steak temperatures was a completely normal part of restaurant service. "Yes," he said, deciding to push further. "And I want the asparagus cut to exactly 3-inch pieces. Not 2.5, not 3.5. 3 inches exactly." "I'll make sure the kitchen knows," Destiny said, writing it down. "Anything else?" Harrison leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing. "The wine needs to be decanted for exactly 20 minutes before serving. And I want you to time it precisely. If it's been decanted for 19 minutes or 21 minutes, I'll send it back." This time, Destiny paused for just a moment. Around them, the restaurant continued its quiet hum of conversation, but Harrison could feel the attention of nearby diners and staff. This was the moment, he thought, where she would finally crack, where she would show the exasperation or fear that he was used to seeing. Instead, Destiny smiled. "Mr. Mitchell, I can certainly time the decanting for exactly 20 minutes. But I have to ask, is there a particular reason you need that level of precision tonight? Are you celebrating something special, or is there something about your usual service that hasn't been meeting your expectations?" The question caught Harrison completely off guard. She wasn't challenging his demands or suggesting they were unreasonable. She was asking about them as if she genuinely wanted to understand his needs better. "I just want things done correctly," he said, feeling oddly defensive. "Absolutely," Destiny agreed. "I want that too. I just want to make sure I understand what correctly means to you so I can provide the best possible service." Harrison stared at her, trying to process this response. Every other server had either accepted his demands with visible anxiety or pushed back with poorly concealed irritation. But Destiny was treating his increasingly absurd requirements as legitimate preferences that she wanted to accommodate. "Just do what I asked," he said finally. Of course, Destiny replied cheerfully. I'll get your wine started right away so it has time to decant properly. As she walked away, Harrison found himself more frustrated than he had been in weeks. Instead of breaking under pressure, Destiny Washington seemed to get more professional and accommodating the more demanding he became. It was infuriating and fascinating at the same time. In the kitchen, the staff watched Destiny relay Harrison's latest impossible requests with a mixture of awe and concern. Girl, he's testing you, Janet said bluntly. Nobody needs their asparagus cut to exactly 3 inches. He's trying to make you quit like all the others. I know, Destiny said simply, checking her watch to time the wine decanting. But so what? If he wants his asparagus cut to 3 inches, then that's what he gets. It doesn't hurt anyone and it makes him happy. Happy? Carlos laughed bitterly. Honey, that man doesn't know the meaning of the word happy. He just likes making other people miserable. Destiny looked at Carlos thoughtfully. I don't think that's true. I think he's just used to being disappointed by people, so he tries to control everything to avoid disappointment. The more specific his requests, the less chance there is for someone to let him down. The kitchen staff exchanged glances. This new girl had some interesting theories about their most difficult customer. 20 minutes later, Destiny returned to table 7 with Harrison's perfectly decanted wine and his precisely prepared meal. The steak had been checked with a thermometer and was exactly 135 degrees. The asparagus had been carefully measured and cut to 3-inch pieces. The potato was prepared exactly as always. Harrison inspected everything with his usual intensity, checking the asparagus lengths with a subtle eye, cutting into the steak to examine its color. Everything was perfect, which should have pleased him but instead left him feeling strangely empty. Is everything to your satisfaction? Destiny asked. Harrison nodded curtly. It's fine. But as Destiny started to walk away, he found himself speaking again. Why don't you get frustrated with me? The question surprised them both. Destiny turned back to face him, her expression curious rather than alarmed. Why would I get frustrated with you? She asked genuinely. Because my requests are ridiculous, Harrison said bluntly. Nobody needs their asparagus cut to exactly 3 inches. Nobody needs their wine decanted for precisely 20 minutes. You know it, I know it, and everyone in this restaurant knows it. Destiny considered his words carefully before responding. Mr. Mitchell, you're paying for dinner at one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. If you want your asparagus cut to 3 inches, then as far as I'm concerned, that's a perfectly reasonable request. My job is to make sure you have a good dining experience, and if attention to those details makes your experience better, then I'm happy to provide them. Harrison stared at her, completely taken aback by her response. But don't you think I'm being unreasonable? I think you know what you like and you're willing to pay for it, Destiny replied. That's not unreasonable. That's just being a good customer. For the first time in his adult life, Harrison Mitchell found himself speechless. This young woman had just reframed his demanding behavior as something positive, something reasonable, something that made sense. She had taken his attempts to break her down and turned them into evidence of his discerning taste. He started, then stopped, not sure what he had been planning to say. Destiny waited patiently, that same pleasant smile on her face, ready to listen to whatever he might need. Never mind, Harrison said finally. The meal is fine. As Destiny walked away, Harrison realized something that disturbed him deeply. He had been trying to make her quit, and instead, she had made him question everything he thought he knew about himself. 3 weeks into their unusual routine, Harrison found himself arriving at Lumiere earlier than usual, claiming he needed the extra time to review documents before his evening conference calls. The truth, which he refused to acknowledge even to himself, was that he had begun to look forward to his interactions with Destiny Washington. She had become a puzzle he couldn't solve, a person who responded to his worst behavior with unwavering professionalism and what seemed like genuine care for his satisfaction. Every attempt to rattle her only seemed to make her more determined to provide excellent service. On this particular Friday evening, Harrison noticed immediately that something was different about Destiny. Her smile was still in place, her demeanor still professional, but there was a tiredness around her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Good evening, Mr. Mitchell," she said, approaching his table with her usual notepad. "How are you tonight?" "Fine," Harrison replied, studying her face more carefully than usual. "You look tired." The observation slipped out before he could stop it, surprising them both. Harrison never commented on his server's personal state, and Destiny blinked in surprise at what almost sounded like concern. "I'm fine, thank you," she said, recovering quickly. "Ready for your usual?" But Harrison found himself continuing to watch her as she wrote down his order. There was something in her posture, a slight slump to her shoulders that suggested she was carrying more weight than just dinner plates. "Actually," he said impulsively, "sit down for a moment." Destiny looked around nervously. "Mr. Mitchell, I can't really sit with customers during service. Pierre would." "Pierre works for me more than I work for him," Harrison said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who could have the restaurant manager fired with a phone call. "Sit." Reluctantly, Destiny sat on the edge of the chair across from him, clearly uncomfortable with breaking protocol. "Is there something wrong with your service? Something I can improve?" Harrison studied her face, noting the dark circles under her eyes, the way she held her shoulders as if they ached. "Are you working other jobs besides this one?" The question was more personal than anything he had ever asked a server, and Destiny hesitated before answering. "I work at a coffee shop in the mornings and I do some cleaning for an office building on weekends. But that's not unusual. Most people in service work multiple jobs." "Why?" Harrison asked, genuinely curious. Destiny looked at him as if he had asked why people need air to breathe. "Because one job doesn't pay enough to live on, Mr. Mitchell. Restaurant work, even at a place like this, doesn't exactly come with health insurance and a retirement plan." Harrison felt an odd sensation in his chest, something that might have been guilt if he had been capable of recognizing it. He had never considered what his servers' lives were like outside of the few minutes they spent attending to his needs. "How many hours do you work in a week?" he asked. "About 70, Destiny admitted. "But I'm saving up for nursing school, so it's worth it." "Nursing school?" Harrison found himself genuinely interested despite his usual indifference to other people's aspirations. "It's always been my dream," Destiny said, her face lighting up for the first time that evening. "My grandmother was a nurse for 40 years. She used to tell me stories about helping people, about being there for families during their hardest moments. I want to do that too." Harrison nodded slowly, processing this information. "And how long will it take you to save enough money?" Destiny's smile faltered slightly. "At my current rate, about 3 years. Maybe 4 if I can't keep up all 3 jobs." The weight of that timeline settled over the table like a heavy blanket. Harrison did quick math in his head: 3 to 4 years of 70-hour work weeks, of exhaustion and struggle, all to achieve a dream that would help other people. "Your order should be ready soon," Destiny said, starting to stand. "I should check on it." "Wait," Harrison said, then paused, not sure why he had stopped her. "Your grandmother, is she proud of your plan to become a nurse?" Destiny's expression grew soft and sad. "She passed away 6 months ago. Cancer. But yes, I think she would be proud. She always said that taking care of people was the most important work anyone could do." Harrison felt that strange sensation in his chest again, stronger this time. He thought about his own grandmother, the only person who had ever shown him unconditional love, who had died when he was 15 and left him alone with parents who saw him as a business asset rather than a child. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said quietly, the words feeling foreign in his mouth. "Thank you," Destiny replied, her professional mask slipping just enough to show real gratitude. "She would have liked you actually. She always said that the grumpiest customers usually had the biggest hearts underneath." The observation hit Harrison like a physical blow. No one had ever suggested he had a heart, much less a big one. His business associates feared him, his employees respected his authority but kept their distance, and his family had long since given up trying to maintain any real relationship with him. "I should get your dinner," Destiny said, seeming to sense that the conversation had ventured into territory that made him uncomfortable. She walked away. Harrison found himself truly alone with his thoughts for the first time in weeks. The dining room continued its elegant dance around him, couples sharing intimate conversations, business associates closing deals over expensive wine, families celebrating special occasions. But at table 7, a billionaire sat by himself, wondering why a young woman's opinion of his heart mattered to him at all. When Destiny returned with his meal, Harrison ate in unusual silence. He didn't inspect every detail with his typical intensity, didn't find fault with the temperature or seasoning or presentation. Instead, he watched Destiny move through the restaurant, taking care of other customers with the same professional kindness she showed him. She helped an elderly couple understand the menu, patiently explaining ingredients and preparation methods. She congratulated a young man who was nervously proposing to his girlfriend at table 12, bringing them complimentary champagne to celebrate. She even managed to calm down a frustrated businessman at table 4 who was unhappy with his wait time for the check. Harrison realized he was witnessing something rare. Someone who genuinely cared about doing their job well, not for recognition or reward, but because helping people seemed to make her happy. When she returned to check on him, Harrison made a decision that surprised even himself. "Destiny," he said, "I want to ask you something, and I want you to give me an honest answer." She nodded, sitting down across from him again despite her obvious discomfort with breaking protocol. "Do you think I'm a terrible person?" he asked bluntly. Destiny looked genuinely surprised by the question. "Why would you think that?" "Because I've made 3 servers quit in the past month. Because I'm demanding and critical and apparently impossible to please. Because everyone in this restaurant is afraid of me." Destiny considered his words carefully before responding. "Mr. Mitchell, I think you're someone who has very high standards and hasn't found many people who share them. I think you've been disappointed by poor service so many times that you've learned to expect the worst from people. And I think you test people because you want to see if they actually care about doing good work." Harrison stared at her, amazed by her ability to reframe his worst qualities as something understandable, even reasonable. "But," Destiny continued, "I also think you're lonelier than you want anyone to know, and that sometimes you're harder on people than you need to be because you're used to being alone." The accuracy of her observation hit Harrison like a punch to the stomach. He had spent so many years building walls around himself, becoming harder and more demanding to keep people at a distance, that he had forgotten what it felt like to be truly seen by another person. "Why don't you quit?" he asked quietly. "Everyone else does." Destiny smiled, and for the first time, it wasn't her professional smile. It was something warmer, more real. "Because I think underneath all that grumpiness, you're actually a good person who's forgotten how to let people take care of him. And my grandmother always taught me that good people deserve patience and kindness, even when they're not very good at asking for it." Harrison felt something crack inside his chest, some wall he had been building for years suddenly developing a fissure. This young woman, who worked 70 hours a week and couldn't afford nursing school, who had every reason to resent his wealth and privilege, was sitting across from him offering him compassion he didn't deserve. "I don't know how to be different," he admitted, the words slipping out before he could stop them. "You don't have to be different," Destiny said gently. "You just have to remember that the people serving you are human beings who are trying their best. Most of them want to make you happy. They just need you to give them a chance to succeed instead of setting them up to fail." Harrison nodded slowly, processing her words. For the first time in years, someone had told him the truth about himself without trying to destroy him with it. Destiny had shown him his flaws while somehow making him feel worthy of redemption. "Your dinner is getting cold," she said softly, gesturing to his untouched plate. Harrison looked down at his meal, then back at her. "Will you stay while I eat? Just for a few minutes?" Destiny glanced around the restaurant, then back at his face. She saw something there she had never seen before, not the cold authority or calculated demands, but something almost vulnerable. "For a few minutes," she agreed. As Harrison ate his dinner with Destiny sitting across from him, he realized something that would have terrified him just weeks before. He was no longer dining alone by choice. For the first time in years, he actually wanted someone's company. And the someone he wanted was a young woman who cut asparagus to exactly 3 inches and believed he had a good heart hidden somewhere beneath his impossible demands. The following Tuesday brought an early autumn storm to Chicago, with rain lashing against the windows of Lumiere and wind howling through the streets. The restaurant was busier than usual, filled with people seeking shelter from the weather and the warm ambience of fine dining. Destiny arrived for her shift soaked to the skin, having run 3 blocks from the bus stop through the downpour. Her uniform was damp, her carefully arranged hair was beginning to escape its pins, and she was shivering slightly as she hurried through the employee entrance. "Girl, you look like you swam here," Janet commented as Destiny tried to dry off with paper towels in the break room. "My umbrella broke on the way to the bus stop this morning," Destiny explained, attempting to fix her hair. "And the bus was running late because of the storm, so I had to run or miss the start of my shift." Pierre appeared in the doorway looking harried. "Destiny, I'm sorry, but we're incredibly busy tonight because of the weather. Mr. Mitchell is already at his table, and he's been asking for you specifically." Destiny nodded, grabbing a fresh apron to replace her damp one. She checked her appearance in the small mirror, doing her best to look professional despite the circumstances, then headed out to the dining room. Harrison was indeed waiting at table 7, but instead of his usual impatient demeanor, he seemed oddly relaxed. He was watching the storm through the large windows, and when he saw Destiny approaching, his expression shifted to something that might have been concern. "You're wet," he observed as she reached his table. "Just a little rain," Destiny said with a smile, though she was still shivering slightly. "Sorry to keep you waiting. The storm has everything running behind schedule tonight." Harrison studied her face, noting the way she was trying to hide her discomfort, the professional smile that didn't quite mask how cold and miserable she must be feeling. For reasons he couldn't explain, her obvious attempt to maintain good service despite her circumstances bothered him. "Have you eaten today?" he asked suddenly. The question caught Destiny off guard. "I'm sorry? Have you eaten today?" Harrison repeated. "You've been working since this morning at your coffee shop job, haven't you? And you probably didn't have time for lunch with this storm." Destiny blinked in surprise. She couldn't remember Harrison ever asking her a personal question that wasn't related to criticizing her service. "I had a granola bar around noon." "That's not a meal," Harrison said firmly. "Order something from the kitchen. Whatever you want." "Mr. Mitchell, I can't eat during my shift." "Pierre would." "Pierre will do what I tell him to do," Harrison interrupted. "And I'm telling you to order food. You can't provide good service if you're hungry and exhausted." Destiny stared at him, trying to process this unexpected kindness from the man who had spent weeks making impossible demands. "That's very thoughtful of you, but I really can't." "It's not a suggestion," Harrison said, his voice carrying its usual authority but somehow warmer than she was used to hearing. "Order food, eat it, and then we'll discuss my dinner. Consider it a business requirement." Before Destiny could protest further, Harrison had already signaled Pierre over to the table. "Pierre, Ms. Washington is going to order something from the kitchen. Put it on my bill, and make sure she has time to eat it properly." Pierre looked between Harrison and Destiny with barely concealed amazement. In 3 years he had never seen Harrison show consideration for anyone's comfort except his own. "Of course, Mr. Mitchell. Whatever you prefer." "I'll have the soup and salad," Destiny said quietly, choosing the quickest items on the menu. "No," Harrison said firmly. "Order something substantial. You're working a double shift and you need real food." Destiny felt her eyes begin to water, though whether from gratitude or exhaustion, she wasn't sure. "The chicken with rice then." "Thank you. That's incredibly kind of you." Harrison waved away her thanks as if kindness was something he showed regularly, though they both knew it wasn't. "Go eat. I'll wait." As Destiny headed toward the kitchen, still processing what had just happened, Harrison found himself watching the storm through the windows with unusual interest. He was thinking about bus stops and broken umbrellas, about young women working 70 hours a week to chase dreams of helping others. He was thinking about things that had never occurred to him before meeting Destiny Washington. In the kitchen, the staff clustered around Destiny as she waited for her meal, everyone wanting to know what had just happened at table 7. "He ordered you food?" Janet asked in disbelief. "The terror of table 7 bought you dinner?" "I think he just noticed I was hungry," Destiny said, though she was just as surprised as everyone else. "Honey, that man has never noticed anything about his servers except their mistakes," Carlos said, plating her chicken with extra care. "This is definitely not normal behavior for him." When Destiny returned to the dining room with her meal, she found Harrison still waiting patiently at his table, scrolling through his phone but glancing up periodically to check on her progress. The simple kindness of the gesture buying her food, waiting for her to eat, treating her basic needs as important was almost overwhelming. "Better?" Harrison asked when she finished and approached his table again. "Much better. Thank you so much, Mr. Mitchell. That was incredibly thoughtful." Harrison felt an unfamiliar warmth at her genuine gratitude. He couldn't remember the last time someone had thanked him for something that wasn't a business transaction. "Now about my dinner. I want to try something different tonight." Destiny raised her eyebrows, ready for another set of impossible specifications. "I want you to choose," Harrison said. "Order whatever you think I might like." Destiny stared at him in shock. "You want me to choose your meal? You've been watching me eat the same thing for weeks. You know my preferences. Surprise me." The request was so completely unlike anything Harrison had ever asked that Destiny wondered if he might be feeling ill. "Are you sure? You're usually very specific about." "I'm sure," Harrison said. "But I have one condition." "What's that?" "You have to tell me why you chose whatever you choose. I want to understand your reasoning." Destiny felt a smile tugging at her lips. For the first time since she had started serving him, Harrison Mitchell was asking her to use her judgment instead of just following his detailed instructions. It felt like a test of a completely different kind. "All right," she said, her confidence growing. "I think you should try the lamb with rosemary and garlic. It's rich and bold like the dishes you usually order, but the herbs will be something new. And instead of your usual potato, I think you'd like the wild rice pilaf. It's more complex, more interesting." "And wine?" Harrison asked. The 2019 Bordeaux, Destiny said without hesitation. It's full-bodied enough to match your usual preferences, but it has more depth than the Cabernet you always order. Harrison nodded slowly. Order it. As Destiny walked away to place his order, Harrison realized something remarkable was happening. For the first time in years he was going to eat a meal that someone else had chosen for him, someone who had paid attention to his preferences and cared enough to select something she thought he would enjoy. It was such a simple gesture, but it felt revolutionary. Someone was taking care of him, anticipating his needs, wanting him to have a good experience. When was the last time anyone had done that? When Destiny returned with his wine, Harrison tasted it carefully. It was excellent, complex and rich, with subtle notes he wouldn't have discovered in his usual choice. She had been right about his preferences, had seen something in his taste that he hadn't seen himself. Good choice, he admitted. Destiny's smile was radiant. I'm so glad you like it. As Harrison waited for his meal, he found himself studying Destiny as she moved through the restaurant. She was still tired, still working too hard for too little money, but there was something joyful about the way she interacted with her customers. She seemed to genuinely care about making people happy, about providing good service not because she had to, but because she wanted to. It was a foreign concept to Harrison, who had spent his adult life surrounded by people who were nice to him because of his money, his power, his ability to help or hurt their careers. But Destiny was kind to him even when he was rude, professional even when he was impossible, caring even when he gave her no reason to care. When his lamb arrived, Harrison cut into it carefully, tasted it, and felt something he hadn't experienced in years: pleasant surprise. The dish was wonderful, better than his usual order, more interesting and flavorful. Well? Destiny asked when she returned to check on him. It's excellent, Harrison admitted. You were right about my preferences. I pay attention, Destiny said simply. Harrison realized that she did. She had been watching him, learning about him, caring enough to understand what might make him happy. When was the last time anyone had paid that kind of attention to his actual needs instead of just his demands? Destiny, he said as she started to walk away again. Yes. Thank you. For the food earlier and for this. It was thoughtful. Destiny's smile lit up her entire face. You're welcome, Mr. Mitchell. I'm just glad you had a good meal. As Harrison finished his dinner, he found himself thinking about broken umbrellas and nursing school, about grandmothers who raised strong young women and servers who worked 3 jobs to chase their dreams. He was thinking about kindness he didn't deserve and attention he had never appreciated. Most of all, he was thinking about a young woman who had somehow managed to take care of him while he had been trying to break her down, and how that simple act of caring had cracked something open inside him that he had thought was permanently closed. The next Friday evening, Harrison arrived at Lumiere with an unusual nervousness that he couldn't quite explain. All week, he had found himself thinking about his conversation with Destiny, about the kindness she had shown him and the way she had chosen his meal with such thoughtful attention. When Destiny approached his table, she seemed more relaxed than usual, as if their previous interaction had shifted something in their dynamic. Good evening, Mr. Mitchell. How was your week? The casual question caught Harrison off guard. She was asking about his life as if she actually cared about the answer, not just making polite conversation. Busy, he said, then found himself adding, I had to fire someone yesterday. Oh no, Destiny said, and her concern seemed genuine. That must have been difficult. Harrison looked at her curiously. Difficult? He was embezzling money from my company. It was necessary. I didn't mean difficult because it was wrong, Destiny clarified. I meant difficult because firing someone is never easy even when they deserve it. It affects their family, their future. That has to weigh on you. Harrison stared at her, amazed once again by her ability to find humanity in situations where he saw only business necessity. The truth was, firing people had never bothered him before, but her suggestion that it should weigh on him made him reconsider his own reaction. I never thought about it that way, he admitted. Most people don't, Destiny said gently. But I think caring about the impact of your decisions, even the necessary ones, is what separates good leaders from just powerful ones. Harrison felt that now familiar sensation of being truly seen by someone who somehow found good in him even when he couldn't find it himself. You have an interesting way of looking at things. My grandmother used to say that everyone has a story that explains why they are the way they are. The mean ones just usually have sadder stories. And what do you think my story is? Harrison asked, surprising himself with the question. Destiny tilted her head, studying his face with gentle curiosity. I think you're someone who learned very early that caring about people meant getting hurt by them. So you decided it was safer to keep everyone at a distance, to focus on business and success instead of relationships. And I think you've been lonely for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to let someone close. The accuracy of her assessment took Harrison's breath away. She had somehow seen through decades of carefully constructed walls to the truth he had hidden even from himself. How do you know that? He asked quietly. Because I know what loss looks like, Destiny said simply. I know what it's like to build walls to protect yourself. The difference is, I had my grandmother to teach me that walls don't actually protect you from pain. They just protect you from joy too. Harrison felt exposed, vulnerable in a way he hadn't experienced since childhood. This young woman had just described his entire emotional strategy with devastating accuracy, and somehow made it sound like something she understood rather than something she judged. My parents died when I was 15, he said suddenly, the words coming out before he could stop them. Car accident. I was sent to live with my uncle, who saw me as a burden and a business opportunity. He put me to work in his company, taught me that emotions were weaknesses and that trusting people was a luxury I couldn't afford. Destiny listened without interrupting, her expression full of quiet compassion. I built my first company when I was 22, Harrison continued, amazed that he was sharing this with someone he had been trying to intimidate just weeks before. By 25, I was worth more money than I could spend. But every success just made me more isolated. People wanted things from me: money, opportunities, connections. No one just wanted me. That sounds incredibly lonely, Destiny said softly. It was, Harrison admitted. But it was also safe. If you don't let people close, they can't disappoint you or betray you or leave you. They also can't love you, Destiny pointed out gently. Harrison felt something break open inside his chest. I haven't thought about love in so long that I'm not sure I'd recognize it anymore. Destiny reached across the table and briefly touched his hand, a gesture so unexpected and comforting that Harrison felt tears threaten behind his eyes. Love is what makes someone notice when you're hungry and buy you food even when you haven't asked, she said. Love is what makes someone try to understand your story instead of just judging your behavior. Love is what makes someone keep showing up, even when you give them every reason to walk away. Harrison stared down at her small hand covering his, at the simple human connection he had been avoiding for years. Why do you keep showing up, Destiny? Why don't you quit like everyone else? Because I see something in you that I don't think you see in yourself, she said. I see someone who cares so much about everything being perfect because he's been hurt by people who didn't care at all. I see someone who's forgotten how to trust but is desperate to remember. And I see someone who's worth the patience it takes to help him find his way back. Harrison felt tears he hadn't shed in 20 years threatening to fall. This young woman, who had every reason to write him off as just another difficult customer, was offering him something precious and rare: unconditional acceptance. I don't know how to be the person you think I am, he whispered. You don't have to become someone different, Destiny said. You just have to remember who you were before you decided caring about people was too dangerous. Harrison lifted his eyes to meet hers, and for the first time in decades, he let someone see him completely, not the billionaire, not the demanding customer, not the successful businessman, but just the lonely man who had been hiding behind all those roles. Will you help me remember? He asked. Destiny smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing Harrison had ever seen. I'd be honored to. As the storm raged outside, Harrison Mitchell began to understand that the real storm had been the one inside him all along, and that Destiny Washington might be the calm he had been searching for his entire adult life. Now, Destiny said, her voice returning to its professional tone but keeping its warmth, what would you like for dinner tonight? And this time, I want you to order something just because it sounds good to you, not because you've had it before. Harrison looked at the menu with new eyes, not as a list of potential disappointments, but as possibilities for pleasure. What do you recommend? I recommend you trust me, Destiny said with a grin. And for the first time in 20 years, Harrison Mitchell decided to trust someone completely. 2 weeks after their breakthrough conversation, Harrison found himself doing something he had never done before. He was nervous about seeing Destiny. Not nervous about the service or the food, but nervous about seeing her, about continuing the conversation they had started, about exploring this strange new feeling of wanting to make someone else happy. He arrived at Lumiere early, claiming he needed to review some contracts before dinner, but really just wanting extra time to think about what he was planning to do. Hidden in his briefcase was an envelope that contained something he had never given anyone before. A genuine gift, chosen specifically to make someone else's life better. When Destiny approached his table, she seemed to notice his unusual energy immediately. You seem different tonight, Mr. Mitchell. Good different. What's going on? Harrison felt his carefully planned words desert him. He had rehearsed this conversation in his head dozens of times, but now, looking at her expectant face, he felt like a teenager asking someone to prom. "I want to ask you something," he said, "and I want you to promise me you'll consider it seriously before you say no." Destiny sat down across from him, her expression curious and slightly concerned. "Okay." Harrison reached into his briefcase and pulled out the envelope, setting it on the table between them. "I've been thinking about our conversation last week, about your plans for nursing school." "Mr. Mitchell." Destiny started, but he held up a hand. "Let me finish. You said it would take you 3 or 4 years to save enough money for school while working 70 hours a week. That means you're going to spend the next 4 years exhausting yourself, missing out on your 20s, delaying your dreams because you can't afford to pursue them now." Destiny nodded slowly, not sure where this was going. "I want to change that," Harrison said, pushing the envelope toward her. "This is a check for the full cost of nursing school, plus living expenses for the next 3 years. I want you to quit your other jobs, focus on your studies, and become the nurse your grandmother would be proud of." Destiny stared at the envelope as if it might explode. "Mr. Mitchell, I can't accept this. It's too much, It's nothing to me," Harrison said firmly. "The amount in that envelope is less than I spend on business lunches in a month. But to you, it represents freedom to pursue your dreams without sacrificing your health or your youth." Destiny's hands trembled as she touched the envelope. "Why would you do this for me?" Harrison looked into her eyes, seeing the same kindness and strength that had first intrigued him, that had somehow broken through his defenses and reminded him what it felt like to care about another person. "Because you've given me something I didn't know I was missing," he said quietly. "You've shown me what it feels like to be treated with genuine kindness, to have someone care about my well-being without wanting anything in return. You've made me remember what it's like to be human." Tears began to flow down Destiny's cheeks. "Mr. Mitchell, this is the most generous thing anyone has ever done for me. But I can't accept charity." "It's not charity," Harrison interrupted gently. "It's an investment. I believe you're going to be an amazing nurse, and the world needs amazing nurses. Consider it a scholarship from someone who believes in your potential." Destiny wiped her eyes, overwhelmed by the magnitude of his offer. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Harrison said simply. "Say you'll take the money and follow your dreams and become the person your grandmother believed you could be." Destiny looked at the envelope, then at Harrison's face, seeing something there she had never seen before. Not the cold authority or calculated control, but genuine care, real affection, honest desire to help her succeed. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll accept your gift. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Thank you so much." Harrison felt a rush of joy unlike anything he had experienced in his business successes. Making Destiny happy, seeing her tears of gratitude, knowing he had just changed her life for the better, it was better than closing any deal, better than any profit margin. "There's one more thing," he said, his heart pounding. "I'd like to take you out to dinner sometime. Somewhere other than here where you're not working and I'm not just a customer. I'd like to get to know you better." Destiny's smile was radiant. "I'd like that very much." "Really?" Harrison asked, hardly believing she had said yes. "Really?" Destiny confirmed. "You've shown me incredible kindness tonight, Mr. Mitchell. The least I can do is let you buy me dinner at a place where I can actually relax and enjoy your company." Harrison felt lighter than he had in years. "Harrison," he said. "When we're not here, when you're not working, call me Harrison." "Harrison," Destiny repeated, testing out his name with a smile. "I like how that sounds." As the evening continued, Harrison found himself ordering his meal differently than he ever had before. Instead of detailed specifications and impossible demands, he simply asked Destiny to surprise him again, to choose something she thought he would enjoy. And as they talked between courses, Harrison began to understand what Destiny had meant about love being someone who keeps showing up. She had kept showing up for weeks, treating his worst behavior with patience and kindness, seeing good in him even when he couldn't see it himself. Now he wanted to show up for her, to be the kind of person who deserved her faith in him, who could match her generosity with his own. For the first time in his adult life, Harrison Mitchell was falling in love, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Their first real date took place the following Saturday at a small Italian restaurant in Little Italy, far from the elegant formality of Lumiere. Harrison had chosen it specifically because it was the kind of place where they could talk without the weight of his reputation or her professional obligations. Destiny arrived wearing a simple yellow dress that made her look radiant, her natural hair styled in soft curls around her face. Harrison, dressed in casual clothes for the first time in years, felt his breath catch when he saw her. "You look beautiful," he said, standing to pull out her chair. Thank you, Destiny replied, accepting his courtesy with a warm smile. You look different too. More relaxed. They settled into their seats, and Harrison realized he had no idea how to have a personal conversation with someone. For 20 years, every interaction had been about business, about maintaining professional relationships or closing deals. But Destiny was looking at him expectantly, waiting for him to be just Harrison instead of Mr. Mitchell. I have to confess something, he said finally. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Destiny asked gently. Have dinner with someone just because I want to spend time with them. I can negotiate billion-dollar mergers, but I have no idea how to have a normal conversation with a woman I care about. Destiny reached across the table and took his hand, her touch warm and reassuring. Then let's start simple. Tell me about something that made you happy this week. Harrison thought for a moment, realizing that happiness wasn't something he usually paid attention to. Honestly? Thinking about seeing you tonight. Planning this dinner, choosing this restaurant, imagining what it would be like to talk with you without any customers or servers or business interrupting us. That's sweet, Destiny said, her smile encouraging him to continue. What about you? Harrison asked. What made you happy this week? Getting to quit my weekend cleaning job, Destiny said with a laugh. Thanks to your incredible generosity, I only have to work one job now instead of 3. I actually had time to read a book yesterday. A whole book just for pleasure. Harrison felt that familiar warmth in his chest, the satisfaction of knowing he had made her life better. What did you read? As they talked about books and movies and dreams for the future, Harrison began to relax in a way he hadn't in years. Destiny was easy to talk to, genuinely interested in his thoughts and opinions, but also willing to challenge him when she disagreed. Can I ask you something? Destiny said as they shared dessert. Why were you so mean to all those servers? I know you're not actually a cruel person, so what was that about? Harrison was quiet for a long moment, considering her question. I think I was testing them, he said finally. Seeing how much they would tolerate, how hard they would try to please me. And when they inevitably failed or gave up, it confirmed what I already believed about people. Which was what? That everyone has a breaking point. That everyone will eventually disappoint you or abandon you if you push hard enough. That it's better to keep people at a distance than to trust them and get hurt. Destiny nodded thoughtfully. And what did you learn from me? Harrison met her eyes, feeling more vulnerable than he ever had in a business negotiation. I learned that some people don't break. That some people respond to difficulty with more kindness, not less. That some people will keep showing up even when you give them every reason not to. And how does that make you feel? Terrified, Harrison admitted with a laugh. But also hopeful. You've made me want to be the kind of person who deserves that kind of loyalty. Destiny squeezed his hand. You already are that person, Harrison. You just forgot for a while. As they walked back to Harrison's car after dinner, he found himself moving more slowly than usual, reluctant for the evening to end. Destiny, I need to tell you something else. What's that? Harrison stopped walking and turned to face her fully. I'm falling in love with you. I know it's crazy, I know we've only known each other for a few weeks, but I can't stop thinking about you. You've changed everything about how I see the world, how I see myself. Destiny's face lit up with joy. I'm falling in love with you too, Harrison. I have been since that first night when you bought me dinner, and I realized that underneath all that grumpiness was someone who actually cared about taking care of people. Harrison felt a relief so profound it almost knocked him over. Really? Really? Destiny confirmed, stepping closer to him. You're not the man you pretend to be in that restaurant. You're kinder, more thoughtful, more caring than you want anyone to know. And I think I fell in love with the real you the moment you let me see him. Harrison reached up to cup her face in his hands, amazed by the trust in her eyes, by the way she leaned into his touch instead of pulling away. I want to be better for you, he said. I want to be the man you see when you look at me. You already are, Destiny whispered. You just have to believe it. When Harrison kissed her under the streetlights of Little Italy, he felt something he had thought was lost forever, the possibility of being truly happy with another person. 6 months later, Harrison Mitchell stood in the kitchen of Lumiere watching Destiny Washington prepare for her last shift as a waitress. Tomorrow she would start nursing school and their lives would begin a new chapter together. The restaurant staff had gathered to say goodbye to the woman who had not only survived the terror of Table 7 but had somehow transformed him into one of their favorite customers. Harrison now said please and thank you, asked about servers' families and even smiled occasionally. The change was so dramatic that new employees didn't believe the stories about his former behavior. I can't believe you're really leaving, Janet said, hugging Destiny tightly. This place won't be the same without you. You'll be fine, Destiny assured her. And I'll come visit. Though I suspect Harrison might want to try some new restaurants now that I'm not working here. Harrison smiled at the sound of his first name on her lips. Over the past months, their relationship had deepened into something neither of them had expected to find. Harrison had discovered that love wasn't the weakness he had always feared, but rather the strength that made everything else worthwhile. And Destiny had found in Harrison not just a generous benefactor, but a partner who challenged her, supported her dreams, and loved her with a devotion that amazed her daily. Actually, Harrison said, stepping forward with a familiar nervousness, I have something I want to say before you officially finish your career as a waitress. The staff and several regular customers who had gathered for Destiny's impromptu farewell party turned to listen. Harrison reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, causing gasps throughout the restaurant. Destiny Washington, he said, his voice carrying across the dining room, 6 months ago, you served me dinner at table 7 and you changed my entire life. You taught me that kindness is stronger than cruelty, that patience is more powerful than demands, and that love is worth every risk I was afraid to take. Destiny's hands flew to her mouth as Harrison dropped to one knee in the middle of the restaurant where they had first met. You stood up to me when everyone else ran away. You saw good in me when I couldn't see it myself. You showed me what it means to truly care about another person. Will you marry me and let me spend the rest of my life trying to deserve the love you've given me? Yes. Destiny cried, not caring that tears were streaming down her face or that the entire restaurant had erupted in applause. Yes, of course I'll marry you. Harrison slipped the ring onto her finger with hands that shook slightly with emotion, then stood and kissed her as their friends and former co-workers cheered around them. Pierre appeared with champagne for everyone, his eyes misty with tears. To Destiny and Harrison, he toasted, who proved that love really can conquer all. As the celebration continued around them, Harrison pulled Destiny aside for a private moment. I have one more surprise, he said, handing her another envelope. Harrison, you've already given me so much. This one is different, he assured her. Open it. Inside the envelope was a deed to a small medical clinic in an underserved neighborhood on the south side of Chicago. What is this? Destiny asked, her voice barely a whisper. It's your future, Harrison said. I know you want to help people and I know you care about communities that don't always have access to good healthcare. When you finish nursing school, this will be waiting for you. Your own clinic where you can take care of people the way you took care of me. Destiny stared at the deed through her tears. You bought me a clinic? I bought us a future where your dreams can help as many people as possible, Harrison corrected. And I hope when you're ready you'll let me help you run it. I've spent 20 years building businesses that only made money. I'd like to try building something that makes a difference. You want to work with me? Destiny asked, amazed. I want to spend every day for the rest of my life working alongside the woman who taught me what it means to truly serve others, Harrison said. If you'll have me. Destiny threw her arms around his neck, holding him close as the reality of their future together settled over her. I love you, Harrison Mitchell. All of you. The demanding perfectionist and the generous dreamer and the lonely man who just needed someone to show him he was worth loving. I love you too, Destiny Washington. More than I ever thought possible. As they held each other in the restaurant where their love story began, neither of them noticed the curious eyes watching from table 7. A new couple had been seated there, and the man was already beginning to complain about the temperature of his water. But that was someone else's story. For Harrison and Destiny, this was just the beginning of a lifetime of taking care of each other, of building something beautiful together, of proving that love really could transform even the most impossible people into their best selves. 6 months later, they would be married in a ceremony where former Lumiere servers served as bridesmaids and the restaurant staff catered the reception. 2 years after that, the Washington Mitchell Free Clinic would open its doors, serving thousands of patients who couldn't afford healthcare elsewhere. And every Tuesday and Friday evening, Harrison and Destiny would return to table 7 at Lumiere, not as customer and server, but as husband and wife, sharing meals and dreams and the quiet joy of two people who had found their perfect match in the most unexpected place. The terror of table 7 had become something far more beautiful. A love story that began with standing your ground and ended with finding your home in another person's heart. But tonight, as Harrison spun Destiny around the restaurant floor while their friends cheered and champagne flowed, the future was just beginning to unfold. And both of them knew that the best part of their story was still to come. Dear viewers, thank you so much for following Harrison and Destiny's journey from their first confrontational meeting to their beautiful love story. This tale is close to my heart because it shows how love can transform even the most guarded people when someone is brave enough to stand their ground with kindness. I'd love to hear from you. What did you think about Destiny's approach to handling difficult people? Have you ever had to stand up to someone who seemed impossible to please? And what moment in their relationship touched your heart the most? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and love connecting with readers who believe in the power of love to change lives.